So I just sign here, and I get Warlock power?
Yep, and all of our Warlocks get our patented Eldritch Blast, which I think you'll find pretty good.
Yeah, but there's a lot of other Warlock magic, right? I mean, I want to dominate the minds of others, curse my enemies, you know, the good stuff.
I really think you're overlooking how useful Eldritch Blast can be for a Warlock. There's really not a lot of slots to work with.
Give me the Mystic Arcanum!
Welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Dave, and as always, I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
Hey, maybe it's your first time to Nerdarchy Ted's Basement. It's a place where we like to discuss news, views, and homebrews for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Sometimes we talk about other role-playing games.
So if you don't want to miss a single video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and attune to that notification bell.
All right, we're going to jump back into our go-to spells for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. This time we're going to talk about Warlock.
This is our first time visiting Warlock, so we're looking at tier 1. That spells up to 2nd level. So let's get into it.
We've done Wizard, we've done Cleric, and we're going to handle this one a little bit different than we normally do. We've got our handy-dandy devices so we can pull up D&D Beyond and quickly and easily look up the spells and see what we're talking about here. All right, so now we're going to jump into our go-to spells for Warlock, and we're going to start with attack spells. And we're going to go to a 2nd level spell called Mind Spike. It's a 1 action to cast, range is 60 foot. It's just a somatic component, and it has a duration to it of 1 hour, but it's a concentration spell. And what do we have here? We have reach into the mind of one creature you can see within range. The target must make a wisdom saving throw, taking 3d8 psychic damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. On a failed save, you also always know the target's location until the spell ends, but only while the two of you are on the same plane of existence. While you have this knowledge, the target can't become hidden from you, and if it's invisible, it gains no benefit from that condition against you. At higher levels, very important for a Warlock, when you cast a spell using a spell slot of 3rd level or higher, the damage increases by a die 8 for each slot level above 2nd. Warlocks automatically cast at a higher spell slot as they advance in level. So when we're looking at our go-to spells for the Warlock, we're going to want spells that are going to automatically get bumped up.
Very true. So I'm going to go into our buff spell, and I'm looking at Hex. 1st level, bonus action to cast, range 90 feet, verbal somatic material, its concentration lasts up to an hour. Its enchantment, there's no attack or saving throw, damage effect is necrotic. You place a curse on a creature that you can see within range. Until the spell ends, you deal an extra 1d6 necrotic damage to the target whenever you hit it with an attack. Also, choose one ability when you cast a spell. The target has disadvantage on ability checks made with the chosen ability. If the target drops to 0 hit points before the spell ends, you can use a bonus action on a subsequent turn of yours to curse a new creature. A removed curse cast on target ends this spell early. At higher levels, when you cast a spell using a spell slot of 3rd or 4th level, you can maintain your concentration on the spell for up to 8 hours. When you use a spell slot of 5th level or higher, you can maintain your concentration on the spell for up to 24 hours. So, again, super helpful considering, number 1, the limited amount of spell slots a Warlock gets, and 2, it automatically has things built into it for those higher level spell slots.
Yeah, so there's a couple things going on. One is every time you make an attack, so when you get extra beams with Eldritch Blast, you're going to do extra damage every time. The spell lasts a long time. It's pumpable. It gets better. And then it also has non-combat uses if you wanted to use it as well. Before we move on to our next category, I got a question for you, Ted. Do you like 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons advice and content dropped right into your inbox every week?
Well, I do, but if you do, then you might want to sign up for Nerdarchy the newsletter.
Nerdarchy the newsletter?
It's true, Dave. Nerdarchy sends out an email every week with content and advice that sometimes you can be able to drop right into your 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons game.
You can find a link in the description down below.
So next, we're going to move on to our next spell, and what's that one and what category?
All right, so next up, we have the Warlock defensive spells, and we're going to go with Darkness. All right, one of the reasons why we picked Darkness as a go-to defensive spell for Warlock is because the invocation devil sight is super popular with the idea that you're going to fight in a cloud of darkness where your enemies can't see you, but you can see them. They're going to have disadvantage to hit you. You're going to have advantage to hit them. But not only that, you can't be targeted by spells that require a target, right? Because they can't see you.
Right.
So it makes it for a great defensive spell. And there's some utility that can go with it as well. So it's second level, one action to cast. It's a range of 60 foot, 15 foot sphere. It is verbal and material components, and it lasts for 10 minutes. Magical darkness spreads from a point you choose within range to fill a 15-foot radius sphere for the duration. The darkness spreads around corners. A creature with dark vision can't see through this darkness, and non-magical light can't eliminate it. A creature with dark vision can't see through this darkness, and non-magical light can't illuminate it. If the point you choose is an object you are holding or one that isn't being worn or carried, the darkness emanates from the object and moves with it, completely covering the source of the darkness. With an opaque object, such as a bowl or a helm, blocks the darkness. If any of the spell's area overlaps with the area of light created by a spell second level or lower, the spell that created the light is dispelled.
Well, this is a lot of fun. And you've got the ability to, as Dave says, like, use this as utility. If you are, walking through a labyrinth or a maze, or, you're underground, you can put out a thing blocking, or put out a darkness blocking one of the tunnels. Therefore, nothing's going to be able to see through, and you could eliminate, a possible threat while you're dealing with something else. So I think this could have a lot of uses if you use it intelligently.
So next up, we're going to look at what is the most iconic spell for a warlock.
All right. So with these videos that we've been doing, we've been choosing actual, spell slot spells. But for warlocks, we had to kind of break that norm. And we went with Eldritch Blast. And I'm certain that, if you're familiar with us on the channel, like, warlocks just always take Eldritch Blast. It's their go-to. It's the normal. So therefore, it had to be the iconic. So it's a cantrip. Casting time 1 action, range 120 feet. It's verbal and somatic. Duration instantaneous. It's evocation. It's a ranged attack. It does force damage. A beam of crackling energy streaks toward a creature within range. Make a ranged spell attack against the target. On a hit, the target takes 1d10 force damage. The spell creates more than one beam when you reach higher levels. 2 at 5, 3 at 11th, 4 at 17th. You can direct the beams at the same target or at different ones. Make a separate attack roll for each beam.
It is one of the strongest cantrips in the game. It does the die 10 damage. It's force damage. Very few things are going to be resistant to force damage. And not only that, as a warlock, you have the ability to invest a lot of resources in your Eldritch Blast.
You can pump up your Eldritch Blast with invocations to increase the range, to have it be able to add your charisma modifier to damage. You stack that with things like Hex, as Dave says, you're doing even more damage. It's super good.
All right, so this one, warlock spells that you may have overlooked. I insist this made it on the list. Whether it was overlooked or utility, I didn't care where, but I really like this spell. I'm a little disappointed that I haven't used it very much in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons yet, but we'll get to that. And that is Flock of Familiars. It's a 2nd level spell, 1 minute to cast, verbal somatic components. It's a conjuration spell, range, area, touch, duration, 1 hour, concentration. You temporarily summon 3 familiars, spirits that take animal forms of your choice. Each familiar uses the same rules and options for a familiar conjured by the Find Familiar spell. All the familiars conjured by this spell must be of the same type of creature, celestial, fey, or fiends, your choice. If you already have a familiar conjured by a Find Familiar spell or similar means, then 1 fewer familiar are conjured by this spell. Familiars summoned by this spell can telepathically communicate with you and share their visual or auditory senses while they're within 1 mile of you. When you cast a spell with a range of touch, one of the familiars conjured by this spell can deliver the spell as normal. However, you can't cast a touch spell through only 1 familiar per turn. Higher levels, when you cast a spell using a spell at 3rd level or higher, you conjure an additional familiar for each slot level above 2nd. All right, so the things that I like about this, 1, you can concentrate for an hour. Right from the get-go, you can have up to 3 scouts basically going out, getting information for you. At the higher levels, you can basically add 3rd, 4th, 5th level, so 3 more. So 6 of them when you max this out. And in combat, it has plenty of uses as well. You can deliver touch spells, whether you have access to, cure wounds somehow, and you can, just have a familiar hanging out by your allies, or you're using attack touch spells, and any of your familiars could deliver it. The enemies aren't going to know where it's coming from. Or you could have your familiars giving the help action to the whole party. I feel like there's a lot of things you could do with this spell.
And even before we started this video, Dave was like, what is the limitations on resting? So you could cast the spell, and while you're concentrating, and Dave and I both agreed that concentrating on a spell is probably no more stressful than reading, and therefore that qualifies as something you could do. So you could cast the spell as a warlock, concentrate while you're taking your short rest, which gets you your spell slot back, and meanwhile your army of scouts is out trying to see what's going on. I think that is, an incredibly overlooked potential. So I would do that in a heartbeat.
All right, so what is our last category, Ted?
Our last category is going to be utility. And for that one, we have chosen the Warlock spell, Misty Step. Great ability, 2nd level spell, bonus action to cast, range is self. It's only a verbal component. Duration is instantaneous. School is conjuration. There's no attack or save. The effect is teleportation. And briefly surrounded by silvery mist, you teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space that you can see. Now, not a super beneficial in, an attack spell, but that's not what it's designed for. Misty Step allows you to teleport out of, the grappled condition. You can teleport across a chasm. You can teleport, up in the air, down to the bottom of a ravine. Anywhere that you can be able to see, you've got the ability to essentially bamf, Nightcrawler teleport, you're there. And in so doing, because we're talking about it being a warlock, you've got the ability to get your spell slots back on a short rest. So you could be able to just, travel, difficult terrain. Like, okay, well, I can't walk across all of that, but you know what? I'll teleport a couple places closer, rest for an hour, keep teleporting. It's crazy, but it's totally doable.
Yeah, there's a lot of uses of it. I mean, we kind of break our rules for Warlock. I feel like whenever you're looking at spells, you want spells that automatically increase in power. But Misty Step is so good, it is definitely worth taking, until you can maybe take something better, like Far Step later on.
So that breaks down our six categories for awesome Warlock spells for Tier 1.
With that, what do you think? What are your go-to spells when you're playing a Warlock? Let us know in the comments below. Before we head on out of here, I want to invite you to join Nerdarchy, the adventuring party over on Patreon. Ted, what can they expect over there?
We're creating content for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons for both players and DMs alike every month.
But that's not all. We do a monthly giveaway that our patrons are automatically entered in.
We also do a weekly hangout with our patrons and more.
So head on down to the description where you can find that Patreon link. Join the Nerdarchy adventuring party. And until next time,
stay nerdy.